All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Podcast. Very excited to be back again this week with an amazing guest and a good friend, a fellow Moparkian. And this is Doug Ridley. He's a seasoned criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor who brings real world courtroom experience from both sides of the justice system. A graduate of Pepperdine Law School and former deputy district attorney with Ventura County District Attorney's Office. Doug now leads Ridley Defense, fighting for clients facing everything from DUIs to serious felony charges. Beyond the courtroom, he teaches police practices at Pepperdine, serves in multiple bar leadership roles, and regularly appears as a legal commentator on ABC7 News. He also co-hosts Doug Defends, where a real-life lawyer breaks down the legal realities behind movies and TV. And by the way, there's so much more. We're going to talk about his upcoming book, his speaking engagements, a new business that's going to be launching here in Moore Park. So, Doug, it's been a long time in the making. Thanks for being here today.
I'm so glad to be here today. Now it's going to be great, and I'm noticing, especially. I mean, you and I have seen each other a whole lot, just not on video, like side by side. And
Right.
how I really think maybe we're brothers, and we just don't know it.
Right? I mean, we got the same haircut. We got a little silver going on. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's so funny. But hey, yeah, we actually scheduled this. I mean, we probably had to reschedule this like three different times. You were slotted to be on the show much earlier this year, and life happens, and like you said,
Yeah.
it's going to happen when it happens, and
Yeah.
and here we are. So we get to make it happen today. So let's just kind of get into it, and tell the audience a little bit more about yourself, who you are, where you come from, and then we'll dive into some of those other topics.
Yeah, well, I am a criminal defense attorney. That's my full-time gig, and then I have a lot of things that I do to promote that. I love the dulcet sounds of my own voice, so I love to do public speaking as often as possible, and I do some teaching, and we have our own podcast and all those things. I've lived in Moore Park since 2001. So long time, 25 years this summer. And so I'm married. I've been married. Next week will be 31 years to my
Nice.
beautiful wife, Rory. And we have 3 kids, Connor, Oak, and Gabby. And they are all out of high school. So much of the last 10, 20 years of my life has been doing things in the schools here in Moore Park and being involved and volunteering my time there. So it's weird that I don't know when school gets out anymore here in Moore Park, and I don't know any of the schedule or any of those sorts of things. But yeah, and that's basically what we've got, and I do a lot of different fun things.
A lot of different fun things. And by the way, huge Star Wars fan. And that's something that
Oh,
we could probably do this whole show just nerding out on Star Wars. By the way, Jackie's watching, super excited to be here. Oh, love it.
those are
Wow, that's a lot of lightsabers right there.
that's one of the 5 lightsaber racks that I had.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
actually a wine rack. Funny enough.
Okay.
But I saw this Star Wars Rebels episode where they had a Jedi dojo, and they had a rack that looked like a rack of katanas, but it was all lightsaber hilts. Like, that is the coolest damn thing I've ever seen. I am making that happen. I'm going to get a wine rack and I'm going to put them up. And so I have this one here. I've got 2 in my home office, and we've got one in the podcast studio as well. That's actually my background for everything. So when I have the wider shot on Zoom, I am almost never on video these days without a lightsaber rack behind me. So it's been fun to have that. And the first handful of times I posted anything online, I'm like, does that dude have lightsabers behind him? Or
Well, we'll definitely have to dive into some Star Wars lore later. Tell me, how did you find Moore Park, right? You've been here for, you said 25 years?
25 years,
Since
yeah.
2001. Lots has changed. Obviously, in the last really 5 years. Like
Mhm.
there's been some kind of explosive growth. High Street is starting to really come alive, and I know you're going to have a hand in making it even better.
Yeah.
How did you hear about Moore Park?
I love that question. What happened was the 101 freeway was closed. And so they rerouted traffic from the Ventura DA's office to our home at the time in Sherman Oaks.
Hmm.
And so they rerouted us through this weird like citrus orchard thing. It was the 118, right?
Yeah.
So, or the back road here. Uh and then I was coming through, and at that time in 2001, if you could get into a new house, the real estate market was such that any new construction was going to be a huge investment. I mean, and double your money really, really quickly. And I drove through this wonderful little town. At that point, we didn't have Target yet.
Right.
So I mean that was a dirt field, and I saw this new construction up on the hill behind Target. It's like, this is kind of cool, and this wouldn't be too bad of a place to be. And so that's how I even knew what Moore Park was. And
Hmm.
then my wife was working in downtown LA. She's an attorney as well. And I was working in Ventura. And we said, look, Sherman Oaks is kind of halfway. Moore Park is also halfway from a time perspective, even though it's a little farther out from Los Angeles from a miles perspective.
Hmm.
And so we decided to do that. We bought our first house in Moore Park, a brand new home behind Target, and then upgraded about 5 years later to a little larger house across the street. So that's how we found it. And then when our kids, so I mean that was just before kids. And so when our kids were born and came up in the schools, we just been all in, and I just can't imagine living anywhere else at this point.
Yeah, it's such a special place, and if this were the Moore Park Chamber of Commerce chamber chat, I always dive really deep into why did you choose Moore Park and why your business here in Moore Park, and it always comes back to it's just such a charming small town.
Yeah.
Everybody knows everybody, which can be a good thing. Sometimes not such a good thing that everybody
Well,
knows
if
everything.
if you ever want, well, yeah, I mean, everybody knows your business, but also, if you want to just throw on grubbies and go up to the grocery store real quick to run an errand, you're going to run into 3 or 4 people that
That's
you
right.
know. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
there's no such thing as a quick stop.
no, never.
No. So yeah, you moved here in 2001. Now you came from Sherman Oaks. Did you grow up in the Valley? Tell me a little bit more,
No,
childhood background, family, parents.
yeah, I grew up in Orange County. So I lived in a town called Buena Park. It's where Knott's Berry Farm is.
Yeah.
My dad was a carpenter at Disneyland and was from 1977 until 2018 when he
Wow.
retired. He passed away 3 years ago, and I've done a lot of thinking about that legacy that he imparted on me. We went to Disneyland every month growing up. I mean, he was a carpenter, so we didn't have a lot of money, so we weren't going on fancy vacations or going to other amusement parks, but he had free passes to Disneyland. And so we went there all the time, and it was my happy place. So my mom was a preschool teacher. My dad was a carpenter. I had a younger sister, 2 years younger than me. And we fought like cats and dogs the whole time growing up. It was just not, we always fought. Um, but sadly, over the last 3 years, my dad passed in 23. My sister passed in 24, and my mom passed last year in 25. So
Wow.
my nuclear family is smiling from above rather than getting to give me hugs these days. So
Yeah.
um, but went to Cal State Fullerton for undergrad and met my sweetie there, met Rory there. And we knew that we were both going to law school, and we both got into Pepperdine Law School and said, what are we going to do here? We're dating. We know that we want to be married at some point. Do we want to get married now, we want to wait till after law school and see how it goes. I'm really glad that I locked her in before law school started, because that first year of law school, first year of marriage, I don't recommend it to anyone. It was absolute hell. And law school is hard. And when you have two people who are getting bombarded with really, really, really difficult stuff, you know, they intentionally try to break you down and weed out the wheat from the chaff. So I don't recommend that, but we made it through, and here we are 31 years later. But that's what brought us from Orange County out to the valley, or in that area. Our first apartment was in Calabasas, then we moved to Woodland Hills, then we moved to Sherman Oaks, and then to Marlboro.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, you know, I didn't know that your dad was a carpenter. I grew up, my father was, he started as a landscaper, moved his way into learning roofing, then he was framing, then he, you know, probably by the time I was born, maybe a little bit after, he was already, you know, building, and so building custom homes. That's what he did for his entire life. And he just passed, this past year. And, you know, you talk about Disneyland too. We're huge Disney fans, as you are, but you know, we would go once a year. You know, talk about like a carpenter. Luckily, your dad was a carpenter at Disneyland, so you get the free passes, right? We got to go to Disneyland once a year, and when Jackie and I started dating, we got our first season passes. What was that, like, you know, back in 93, 94, and we had passes every year until, like, all of us, including the kids, until just a couple years ago, and now Jackie and Maddie got passes again. But we would go like once a month, and people are like, "Are you crazy? Like, it's Disneyland. Like, how great is it?" I'm like, "It's the best place in the world." Because I could,
it is.
Like you could go there and you could probably sit and not go on any rides and just like sip some coffee, have a little dessert or lunch, and just relax. You know, it's just it is seriously a happy place.
When you're going not to try to get the most out of it that you can possibly go. I mean, folks that save up for 5 years, you know, to go, they got to squeeze every drop of Disneyland out of it. So they got to go on every ride. They got to do all the things.
Yeah.
The last 5 times I've been to Disneyland, because we have passes now and whatever, and we go every couple months probably now. And we go with friends, and we go and we have dinner and some drinks, and you know, I think maybe have been on one ride each time we went, maybe. And you know, how could you go to Disneyland and not go on rides? Because it's relaxing and wonderful, and it's just, you just absorb everything. So
yeah, it is great. It is great. Well, again, we could probably talk about Star Wars or Disneyland and all this stuff, but let's talk about the criminal justice system, right? You've seen it from both sides, right? You've been a prosecutor and now a defense attorney. How did that transition change the way you view justice and fairness?
Yeah, I was getting pretty angry as a prosecutor, and it was making me pretty bitter and jaded, because I saw everybody as the bad guy. Everywhere I went, I was on full alert, and everywhere I turned, it was criminals. Oh, that place! I just picked up I just read a police report about a stabbing that happened at that place. I would never go there. You know, so I would see the world as the criminal justice system. And my wife, bless her heart, said, you know, you don't really smile too much anymore. Especially the last 3 years that I was there at the DA's office. I was working sex crimes unit. So I was working special victims unit, like you see on the Law and Order. That was me. I was doing that. So going and doing the interviews, going out on search warrants, working with detectives. And I am so proud of the work that I did there. And I know that I made major differences in people's lives. And I never wanted to be a scumbag criminal defense attorney. I did not leave to be a criminal defense attorney, because criminal defense attorneys were scumbags. And I thought they were all just garbage. And the depiction that we usually see in media is the snaky, slimy, you know, getting them off at all costs kind of a criminal defense attorney. And that was the perspective that I had of what I do now.
Yeah.
when I left the DA's office. So I left to go do business and real estate, some entertainment law, and immediately, like the first day on the new job, they said, I know you said you didn't want to do any criminal defense work, but we have a client whose son broke into his next door neighbor's house drunk to steal more beer. And he's in a lot of trouble. It's like, well, yeah, he's in a lot of trouble. That's first-degree residential burglary. That's a strike. And he could be looking at prison time, multiple years in state prison. He's 18 years old. I said, no, I'm not going to help him. I don't care. And then they said, well, how about you just consult on the case?
Mm-hmm.
Give us your expertise. Give us your background so that we don't screw it up. Okay. And then they screwed it up, and so then I ended up helping, and I got in, and I made a big difference for that kid. I don't remember exactly what he got punishment-wise, but I did a lot of damage control for him because there wasn't a question whether he was guilty or not. And that changed my perspective of the justice system as well. And now, since 2011, I've done nothing but criminal defense. So I don't do any other area of law. And what I've found now is that, especially with where we live, especially in the safest area of the state of California, and arguably the safest area right up there, ranks right up there in the entire country.
Mm-hmm.
We live in an area with really good people. And I can be smiley, happy Disneyland Star Wars Doug, and I am going to attract people that want to work with happy, smiley Star Wars Disneyland Doug. I am not going to attract the hardcore wife beaters, gangbangers, drug runners, mass murderers. I'm not going to attract those people, and I don't need to attract those people. And what I've learned over the years is that I've grown this criminal defense practice based on those values and that ethics, helping good people who screw up, and their kids who screw up. And if they come at me hard and they are wanting to get off at all costs, I just tell them there are a lot of good people out there who you can go who will do anything and everything to try to get you off. Like, if you're innocent, I will work my butt off to try to make that happen for you. But I work with people that are 100% guilty all the time, and my job for them is damage control.
Mm-hmm.
I had to explain this. This is a cool exercise, and I'm pretty sure the first time I had to do this was in Rotary, way back in the day. But explain what you do so that my 7-year-old kid who's visiting understands. And I said, well, imagine if you were a minute late to class and the teacher wanted to suspend you from school for a month. Is that fair? No, that's not fair. It's like, so sometimes someone can come in and argue with the teacher about what's fair because you were a minute late for class and what's the right punishment for that. And it just makes it the most simple thing ever. The way I also explain it to people that are a little older than 7 is that rather than what you see on TV and movies is the Lincoln lawyer and all of those sorts of suits and all of those things, often it's a little bit more like being a CPA. I mean, everybody has to pay taxes, and their CPA is looking to minimize how much taxes and get them through the process. And there's a lot of rules and a lot of forms and a lot of advice that you need. And more than anything, that's my approach to the criminal justice system, is getting people through it. And if they charge the wrong charge, well, I pick up the phone and I call a prosecutor and I say, hey, remember when we used to work together? Remember when we had conversations like this and you filed this as too high of a charge, and let me help you explain why. And sometimes they tell me to pound sand, but I at least approach it with a level of kindness and respect that I've found wins the day more than the I'll fight for you, tear stuff up in the courtroom kind of the demeanor and attitude.
Yeah. Well, listen, I can't help but hear something in the background. I'm assuming you're in your office on High Street. Is that right?
I can hear
that train right? And that's just something that in Moore Park, like only people in Moore Park know, like you're excited when you hear the train.
Well, and what's so cool about, especially, so my office is here on High Street. My wife and I own this building. We have a 2-story building on High Street, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But from here, you can hear the train whistle all throughout town. But from High Street, you can also hear the bell, and the bell is what reminds me of Main Street
Yeah.
Disneyland.
Yep.
And every time I hear the train bell here in the office, I'm like, oh, I'm at Disneyland. This is great.
Right. Yeah. Disneyland Doug today.
There you go.
So as you were talking about, your transition and your perspective, I remember at the Moore Park Chamber of Commerce networking breakfast, every time you would stand up and you always had a really great commercial. And near the end, you would say, listen, sometimes good people make bad decisions. And it's my job to make sure that they are treated fairly. And as you explained, the make sure that the punishment fits the crime.
Yeah.
And so talk to me a little bit, because as you were a prosecutor, like you saw everybody as the bad guy, and like you
Yeah.
just wanted to put everybody away, which, listen, if we're talking about child molesters and we're talking about murderers, no doubt, right? To the hilt, like get rid of them. But when it comes to someone, this 18-year-old makes a stupid, drunk decision, breaks into a house to get more beer. Like he wasn't breaking in the house, I'm assuming, to hurt anybody. He wasn't
Right.
breaking into the house to really steal anything other than more beer. Had it
Right.
been drugs, maybe we would have a different kind of thought. But, and I'm not trying to make light of it or lessen the, because he broke into someone's house. It's crime, right? But so, kind of walk me through that, how you determine making sure that the punishment fits the crime.
Yeah, a lot of it is what I love doing in every area of my life, which is telling stories. So much of what decisions are made about, or the way that decisions are made in the criminal court system, is the story that is being told. And for the prosecutors, initially, the story that they get about what's going on is from a police report. And the police report, well, they've already made a decision that the person should be arrested. And so, not to say, I mean, I have so many friends still in law enforcement to this day, and have I believe, a pretty decent reputation within the law enforcement community as a straight shooter. I'm not suggesting they taint things. I'm not suggesting that but they only have the ability to investigate to a limited amount. Knowing that someone has mental illness is not something usually that they're asking questions about there. Knowing that someone is a veteran and has served this country, often you wouldn't know that. Most of the time they'll know if they've got prior criminal histories or not. They also, the kid that broke into somebody's house, they're reporting to solve that crime. And it's, like you said, it's serious. People are scared and violated because of that. And so it needs to be treated seriously. What I like to do, and my approach to things, is telling the rest of the story, telling the other half of the story. How did we get here?
Mhm.
How is an 18-year-old kid drinking so much beer that he thinks it's a good idea to break into the next door neighbor's house to steal beer? And so we started looking at, okay, we need to have a serious conversation about your alcohol intake. You're only 18 years old. Why are you drinking? And why are you drinking so badly that you feel the need to break into the next door neighbor's house to steal beer? Once we're able to develop that, then it reframes it, and you can tell the story behind it. And to me, that's so much of what I do. Sometimes I don't have a lot of story to tell. Sometimes it is, man, this person is a decent human who does community service work, and they're 100% guilty. So what's fair? And sometimes there's not a lot to argue. But another thing that we develop with our clients is, especially when we get on board early, like, okay, eventually I'm going to have to go tell a judge a story about you. So if you've got nothing in the pages right now, start writing the book now. Get out there and rack up community service hours so that I can come in and say that you've got 200 hours of community service. Go out there and do 5 AA meetings a week, so that I can show that you're taking your alcohol problem seriously. Go out there and make a difference in the world. You have some time. Let's write the story of who you are, and let's do it now. So that's a lot of the approach. And if we can come in and at least make a decision about someone, and I can show that they truly are that good person that we're talking about. Sometimes I end up getting a client in and they make it through the filter and they say, nah, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, well, cool. What you're giving me in the way of tools is he did it. He confessed. We have him on video doing it, and he doesn't have any prior history. And that's all the ammunition you're giving me. Work with me a little bit here.
Right.
So that's a lot of my process.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and speaking of stories, I'm a huge, I love movies. I love watching, TV series, and you brought it up already, right? You got Lincoln Lawyer. You've got like one of my favorites recently was The Rookie, and you got the DA that's on the show. All these conflicts that are going on. Talk to me about some of the reality of what we see on TV versus what you actually see in the courtroom.
Yeah, most of it's garbage. So most of it is garbage, and it's hard for me to watch. I think in the same way that any of us, we have our areas of expertise, and I have friends that are medical experts that can't watch any sort of hospital show because that's not how it happens. Also, for me, it makes it feel like work a bit because I can't turn off my brain. The one show that I've watched that has been truest mostly to what I see in the criminal justice system is actually the Netflix Lincoln Lawyer that recently on. The original movie, garbage. And it's not garbage. It's just the original movie is designed to be Matthew McConaughey's character is an absolute slime bag and it bites him.
And it's based, but is it based on a true story?
It is definitely based on. It's inspired by an actual person for sure.
Okay.
But
Jackie's bringing up Suits. Have you watched Suits?
I have not watched Suits because the idea of watching a show where someone is pretending to be a lawyer and hijinks ensue, which is what I understand the premise is. Everybody tells me I should watch Suits. I haven't watched Suits. But let me tell you why I like Lincoln Lawyer. Sorry, Jackie. Yeah. But the reason why I like Lincoln Lawyer, the unrealistic aspect of Lincoln Lawyer is that he works on one big case a season, and the big case is a murder case, and his job is to find out who really did it. I have never had the opportunity as a criminal defense attorney, I've been doing this now for a very long time, to go and initiate my own murder investigation parallel to the police to try to solve a murder. That would be so cool to be able to do that. That's not our lives. The other parts of Lincoln Lawyer, though, that are outside the investigation work, the courtroom interactions. Every once in a while, Mickey Holler on the show pulls something really slimy, and it disappoints me immensely in him. There's one where he told his client that he's going to intentionally make him angry. He's going to have a blood capsule in his mouth, and he gets punched in the face, and blood goes everywhere, and they declare a mistrial, and it's all just set up and fake. That disappointed me immensely because most of the time he's not that slimy of a character on the Netflix show. But my wife and Rory also has criminal law background as well as a prosecutor. And so we were watching the show together, and I hit pause. I said, man, the one thing I don't get about his closing statement right now is why he hasn't talked about the timeline, because the timeline of events on this, but I guess at the end of the day, they only have an hour an episode. So, I'll give it a pass. I hit play, and the next words out of his mouth were, we're going to talk about timeline. I'm like, I am awesome, and I predicted the show, and I love this show because it's self-validating. So, but most other shows just are just silly, pure fiction. They could be set in an accountant's office as much as they could be set in a lawyer's office. It just feels more dramatic if it's in the lawyer's office, I guess.
So, talking about the TV shows and talking about movies, you also have a podcast that you do, Doug Defense, and a couple of the episodes that I've watched are just so, I think, so genius the way that you've kind of done this. Give us an example of one of your favorite episodes that you've done where you've taken kind of a movie or a character and defended them.
Yeah, we've done everything from Star Wars to Marvel to DC to Superman to we just filmed what's coming out next week, Inception. So we did an analysis of Inception, and just to step back, it's Real Lawyer talks about fake stuff. So we don't deal with, oh, well, there was this drama with this actor, or pulling it into the real world or anything like that. What we do is say, what if our laws as we exist applied to the cast of Friends? How many of them are going to jail? How many of them have committed crimes, and how serious are they? My favorite episode has been our first episode that we ever did, and I made some people kind of angry with the title because it was Doug Defends Anakin Skywalker for killing the Jedi younglings. And I actually have a really good Star Wars friend who kind of disowned me for a while. It's like, how could you defend somebody killing kids? It's like, it's way more complicated than that. And watch the show, because what I do on the show is actually what I do in real life. And I talked on the show about, first of all the different crimes, that were in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, and other issues that could come into play, adoption issues, with Luke and Leia and things like that. But when we got to Anakin Skywalker, what I talked about is developing the story. And what we know about this character, Anakin Skywalker, is that no one has ever been nice to him. The only person that's ever been nice to him is the evilest emperor of the universe. Even the Jedis are, except for his one mentor, are rude to him every single time he goes into the Jedi Temple. Mace Windu is sitting there scowling and giving him side eye every single time he goes in front of the Jedi Council. And then he gets manipulated and turned around, and he gets convinced the only way to save his wife is to develop more powers, and the only way he can do that is by embracing that dark side. And when you start talking about the back story of why somebody does something horrible, like that awful and that horrible, it pulls it right into the real world, and then we can have a conversation. I loved the Superman movie that came out last year. Absolutely loved it. Loved it. And my co-host Billy really wanted me to say Superman's a criminal. Say Superman's a criminal. So I knew he was going to take that and blast that all over social media. Like, I'm not going to give you that soundbite. As it turns out, Superman totally committed crimes. And we talked about, how do you deal with that? And, how do you deal with this hero who is so good and so flawless, who makes the bad choice to pick up the leader of a foreign country and push him up against a cactus? That's a plot line in Superman. So anyway, we have so much fun, and it's just ridiculous. and we did Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which is just the most silly episode that we've ever done, second only to Toy Story, where we talked about how if the toys are all lying about being sentient and they're pretending to play dead, are they illegally committing felony eavesdropping every single time they go to the floor? And just silly, stupid things like that.
How did the concept of this show even come about?
Billy Patterson, who is my co-host, worked for another company who wanted that the very first thing that we ever did together was we wanted real experts evaluating John Wick. And so they brought a psychotherapist, a ballistics expert, and a criminal defense attorney to be real life experts to evaluate John Wick. And the psychotherapist talked about his trauma from his wife and his dog, and the ballistics expert said, yep, that's exactly how that gun would work, and that's the perfect gun for that situation, but in that scene it should be a different gun. And then they went to me, and I talked about how when all the assassins come into his house, he's actually defending himself and he's not committing crimes. Where he starts committing crimes is where he brings in the cleanup crew to get rid of all the bodies, because that's unlawful. And so we started there and did a few of those projects. And then the two of us decided, like, this is something that we love doing, and it's been a blast. We're hoping at some point to do some live shows and do some panel discussions at conventions. And then, because we talk about so much law, I've actually submitted a couple of the episodes to get approval for continuing legal education credit, so that I can redo those shows or have people watch those shows and get the continuing legal education requirements that we have to have as lawyers. Lawyers need 24 hours of additional legal education every 3 years.
Mhm.
And so it could end up being an actual educational tool where people get legal credit for watching our silly show. So yeah.
That's really cool. So while people are watching here, where are you on YouTube? What's the YouTube handle?
Yeah, it's Doug Defends everywhere. DOUG DEFENDS, and Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. That's where we are. Every podcast streaming service we are on. You know, we're doing okay. You know, I don't know that we've got, you know, master motivation numbers, but we're doing all right. And every once in a while, something just absolutely blows up on TikTok. And I have a post right now that has 480,000 views, and it's just me talking about a scene in The Office where Pam's ex-boyfriend is saying, "I'm going to kill Jim Halpert." And I say, folks, my legal advice, don't say you're going to kill somebody. And also, don't kill somebody. 484,000 views on TikTok. Like it's gone purely viral, and we've got a handful of others that have done that too. So
yeah, you guys have had some great success with that. Great success, far greater than master motivation. But yeah, it's fun to watch. Really fun to watch. Now, we talked a little bit about Star Wars already, and since we're kind of in that, you know, realm, you're also involved deeper. Tell them what the 501st Legion is.
Yeah. 501st Legion is a Star Wars costuming group, and it's a bunch of nerds that do fun things like conventions and parades, but we also go to children's hospitals and charity events and things along those lines. And in order to be a member, you have to have your costume inspected by hyper super nerds who will go in and say, oh, well, the gap in your stormtrooper belt is 3/4 of an inch. It's only supposed to be a 1/2 inch. So you need to go back and fix that and come back. The idea is that every costume looks like it came right out of the movie, right? Literally like right on screen. And a bunch of my friends that are in the 501st were actually brought in for the Mandalorian. There's a scene with 25 stormtroopers that come in, and those are all my nerd friends who made their costumes in their garage and were so good that they brought them on the show. The things I love doing the most, though, are the going in and working with the charities and children's hospitals and stuff like that. If you hear about Star Wars people in legit costumes, not at a Disney place, but anywhere else, chances are it's my group.
That's awesome. It's so cool. I'm still waiting for the day that I see an entire sea of stormtroopers walk the Moorpark Country Days parade.
I tried to get that done one year, and we ended up with, you know, a good solid dozen of us. But yeah, the most stormtroopers in one place has been the Rose Parade back in 2008, and there were hundreds came in from all over the world with George Lucas as the Grand Marshal, and it was pretty amazing. I wasn't a part of that, but I have friends that were.
That would be super cool. That would be super cool. Well, let's get back to, let's talk about lawyer stuff again.
Yeah.
You know, you handle everything from DUIs to serious felony cases. What do people most misunderstand about criminal defense attorneys and the clients they represent?
Yeah.
Touch on this a little bit.
Yeah. But it's this idea that our job is just to get everybody off at all costs. And sometimes we have legitimate defenses. I mean, I had a case once where someone was accused of stealing a wallet at a doctor's office and then using the credit cards at that wallet for a shopping spree in downtown LA. They got the wrong person. And I can prove with GPS cell phone tracking data that my client was in Northridge at the time. So there are times where I'm working with somebody who's truly innocent. And people are shocked when I say, yeah, vast majority of my clients are 100% guilty for everything that they do. Like, well, how can you represent a guilty person? Like with kindness and explaining the story, and that's it. It's more a shepherd than anything else, bringing them through a really, 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 really bad time.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is that we wonderfully live in a country that you are entitled to a free attorney. And a lot of people ask me kind of what the difference is between public defenders and private attorneys, because I think a lot of people have the impression that all criminal defense attorneys are like the public defenders that are the court-appointed attorneys. Those attorneys have to have tough skin, and they have to make sure that they can handle any type of case that gets thrown their way, and they are doing a different kind of work. Private attorneys get a bad rap sometimes because all we care about is money. Well, yeah, I have a business and a family to feed, and I get paid for my legal advice. So yes, there's a money aspect to what I do. But having said that, I think the biggest misconception is this idea that we're a get everybody off at all costs kind of a philosophy, and there are people that are like that, like I explained before. But the other thing too is that there's a lot of work that we do before we go to court, and I think that that's something that a lot of people are surprised about. My advice to people, if you can afford a private attorney, is you call somebody right away when you know an investigation is happening, because I will pick up the phone and call a detective before it even gets to the district attorney's office, before it's even filed in court. Because if there's more information, the detectives that I've known and worked with, they don't want to make the wrong decision. They don't want to arrest a person who's the wrong person. Like if I had that other case, the theft case with cell phone data at the very, very beginning, we didn't end up coming in until later. I would have said, hey, listen, check cell phone logs because you got the wrong person. And I would have stopped that case from even being filed to begin with. And so the idea that picking up the phone and talking to law enforcement before is a big part of what we do is a surprise for some people as well.
Well, that leads really well into the next question is, as a professor who teaches police practices, what do you think future attorneys and law enforcement officers must understand to improve trust and accountability?
It's a theme for me, and it's a core value here at our firm, and it's kindness. Kindness and civility win the day more than someone who is tearing stuff up. The challenge with law enforcement specifically is that, we all have this impression in this area of the world that you and I are fortunate enough to live in. It's very safe. Most everyone respects law enforcement, and we don't have a lot of scandal. So our law enforcement experience here is not the same as even in our neighbors down in Los Angeles. It's a different experience in Los Angeles because they're dealing with different things. When you have an encounter with law enforcement, you don't know whether they just came from a murder scene or they had to, attend to a horrible accident, or whether they just left Disneyland and you're the first call of the day. You
Right.
know, and so for law enforcement friends, when you have a detective who's trying to lead with kindness, they get a whole lot more accomplished. For new attorneys, they think that they have to be tough enough and fight hard and do all of those things. And you do have to prove some toughness when you're a new attorney. I have the benefit of practicing for almost 30 years. So, you know, I can be softer, kinder, and I still have the weight of my reputation behind me. But civility and kindness really win the day a whole lot more.
And I mean, isn't that true just in life in general? Like,
I think
as a
so.
right as husband and wife,
Yeah,
kindness and civility. Like, we don't have to be right. We don't have to win the argument. In oh my God, in politics, right? Like just some kindness and civility
yeah,
instead of all the back and forth banter and trying to prove who's wrong and who's right and who's
yeah,
better and like all of that. I think that just really transcends into all areas of life, not
yeah.
just law enforcement and as an attorney.
I
So
agree with you. And the other thing too, Jason, is that I think, you know, and I know that you share this philosophy as well. I mean, what it also does is it allows you and I to walk through the world with smiles on our faces more than the people that don't embrace that. And
yeah,
and and that's infectious, you know. I mean, if you see somebody and they are worked up and they are, you know, that's infectious. If you see somebody and they greet you with a warm smile and, oh my gosh, it's great to see you, how have things been, that's going to completely change how you react.
well, and it goes back to the beginning of our conversation where you said as an attorney in the beginning, you were just looking for the criminals, looking and to quote, you lost your smile, you
Yeah,
know, because you're always looking for what's wrong or what's bad and making sure that they get what they're supposed to get. And I think that when you go through life looking for, when you look for the good in the world, like that's what you're going to find.
yeah,
When you look for everything wrong, it's so easy. And again,
yeah,
going back to like politics. I have some friends that are both sides of the fence, right? But so bitter and so angry against a group of people that they don't even know
mm,
what's going on in their life, what's happening in their life, what's happening in their family. And I have to say that there's definitely been times in my life where I was very easily persuaded to feel so strongly one way, but my perspective has changed just a lot, especially in this last couple of years. When you go through something very traumatic in your life, as having your wife literally almost die, and go through a battle of leukemia, like to me, like everybody asks like, Is everything okay?" And I've often answered like, my wife is healthy and we are good, because that's
yeah,
all that matters to me now, because
yeah,
I just look for the next good day.
yeah,
Forget about, like, there's plenty of bad, there's plenty of hard, there's plenty of, stress and all the other things. Like, why make it worse by just projecting all that negativity? So,
yeah.
I'll get off my soapbox here for a second.
I'm
You're
with you.
you're a you appear as on the news as a legal commentator. How do high profile cases get misrepresented in the media, and what should the public listen for more critically?
Hmm. You know, the higher profile cases, um, we have to remember that most of what we hear are advocates, right? I mean, lawyers are advocates, and our criminal justice system is an adversarial system by nature. So, you know, you have one side who is arguing for one thing, you have the other side that's arguing for another thing, and sometimes there's commonality in between. But generally speaking, especially on these high profile cases, you've got battles going on each side, and so it's all spin. So much of it is spin, and we can say it differently. In the legal world, we say we're framing it differently,
Mhm.
you know. And but at the end of the day, some of the bigger cases that we've seen recently, even here locally, some pretty darn high profile cases. If you have attorneys that are winning at all costs, how can you trust what is being shared then? And then misunderstanding what happens, so a lot of times when I get phone calls to go on air, it's to explain the backstory behind it. So, explain why when Chris Brown barricades himself into his house and goes on social media and says he dares the police to come and come and get him. This has happened years and years and years ago, but it was one of my favorite appearances that I'd done. It's the one that it's on the front page of my website still. Chris Brown, don't do that. And here's all the crimes, and this is the procedure, and this is what the police are going to end up doing. So it's giving the color and the backstory and explaining. But your question as far as what we should watch out for, we can never know everything that the jury hears. We can never know what the jury decided, because usually they keep that confidential and they usually keep that quiet. Juries get hung up on really weird things sometimes, and you don't know how that conversation spirals when it's back with 12 people in the jury room.
Mhm.
A lot of times they're making the decision based on emotion. A lot of times they've had their heartstrings pulled in the courtroom that we don't ever see. So I would say, for the general public, especially when you're hearing reporting on high profile cases, treat everything with suspicion and be looking really, really, really carefully, and wait till it's over. You're not gonna know until it's over.
Well, I have jury duty coming up
I'm
July
sorry.
16th. So I always get excited about jury duty because jury duty for me means I get to catch up on movies or read a book or something, and I'm out in 4 hours. But I've actually never, and knock on wood, never been called to a jury. Uh, don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I've never had that experience. But any advice, above and beyond that, like for people sitting on a jury?
Uh, uh, yeah, yeah. Follow the law and listen to the facts, please,
Yeah.
please, because a lot of times, I don't do a whole lot of jury trials these days because I don't need to. Um, and when I say I don't need to, it's because I usually get what I want. I mean, they're guilty or they're innocent or they're somewhere in between, and we
Mhm.
talk. And I spend all of my efforts and energy trying to avoid a jury trial as much as I can. It's fun. It's like riding a roller coaster. It's super fun to do a jury trial. But for potential jurors out there, we have people who tune out when the judge is telling them what the law is. We have people who fall asleep in the middle of testimony. I mean, so be aware, be ready, take it seriously. And I had a judge friend who used to tell the potential jury pool, that you are participating in the democracy of this country in a way that people don't get to do. And it is an honor to be able to do jury duty. We view it as a burden. I view it as a burden. I always forget that my friend tells that, but you reminded me. It is an honor. We don't get to go and sit on the floor of Congress and pass notes to our congressman, but you can participate in this aspect of our democracy by showing up and taking it serious.
Yeah, cool. All right, thanks for that. Looking back on your career,
Hmm.
what's been the most challenging case or decision, not legally, but more personally?
I had a case recently. Um, there's actually two that are tied, but I'm going to save the. It's just the hardest one. And this is it was a 16-year-old kid who was autistic, who did not have his driver's license yet, and he went and took his dad's car to the corner market to get snacks and hit the accelerator instead of the brake pedal, and wiped out another car and killed two people that were in the car.
Oh,
And I've worked with a lot of cases with people that make mistakes in accidents. I've worked on cases with people with DUIs and get in serious accidents, and there's a lot less sympathy for those folks. But the people who truly do an accident and someone dies in the accident is some of the hardest cases to do. The prosecutor can still file charges, criminal charges on cases like that if they believe that there was negligence. And if they believe it's gross negligence, like really serious bad negligence, they can file it as a felony. And when I was working with this family leading up to it, again, no question about what happened here. The question is going to be, what's the appropriate charge? And I knew that that was going to be the job the whole way through. And the kid can't process everything really well, but would awkwardly give me a hug after every time we met. The family was always in tears, and just distraught and destroyed. And when I walked into court the very first day, that's the day that we get the charging document from the prosecutor. And then the prosecutor in the case decided to charge him with 2 counts of murder rather than vehicular manslaughter or the appropriate charges in the case. And thankfully, the story has a nice ending because there are programs in place for someone that has a developmental disability and are able to work that out and everything else. But that day, having to go back out and tell that kid who understands, it's not that he wasn't, he was verbal, he could process things, but telling him that he was going to hear some really scary words in the courtroom that day. I remember getting down on one knee in front of him and just looking him eye to eye as he was sitting, and say, look, it's going to be okay. I'm going to get you through this. We're going to get out of here. But that's one of the hardest days of my career so far.
Yeah, that's really rough. That's so hard. Last question. For someone considering a career in law or criminal justice, what advice would you give about what the job is really like versus what people expect?
It's a lot of boring paperwork. And there's definitely a lot of court stuff, but the court stuff ends up being not what you see on TV and movies. I have clients who well, and even with law students, right? They have this idea that it's all going to be like they did in their mock trial in high school or their trial practice class in mock trial in high school, trial practice class in law school. It's going to be like that. And most of the time when I go to court, I go in and I say, Douglas Ridley appearing for Jason Flame with 977 authority, asking to come back on August 31st. Any issue of time is waived. Okay, Mr. Ridley, see you back then. And we're postponing cases because we're not ready to discuss them yet, or because I don't have all the evidence yet. And a lot of the work, a lot of the day-to-day work is this calendar shuffling kind of work. It's pretty fun to read police reports. It is. That's a fun part of the job. It's fun to look at evidence. And it's the part of some of us who wanted to be a policeman when we were little, gets fed by working in the criminal justice system. And so there is something cool like that about it.
And is that something that you wanted to be? Did you want to be in law enforcement?
There was the one time I ever told my dad that I was thinking I wanted to be a cop. He had my cousin, who much older cousin, who had been a cop for 20 years and had seen it all, tell me all about the dead bodies and the domestic violence calls and the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst, and said, go to college and get an advanced degree. And then if you want to be a cop, then you can decide what you want to do. And
so that's that. So here you are.
So here I am. Here I am. And I've worn a bulletproof vest and flown in a helicopter and got out on a search warrant. So, I mean, I've had the chance to do some of that stuff.
Wow. Very cool. Well, listen, it's already been a quick hour for us and we're at our time. So I invite anybody to drop your comments or questions for us to check in on a little bit later. You'll find this video again on YouTube at Master Motivation Podcast. Please like, share, and comment all the way through and on all the different platforms. And Doug, remind everybody, where can you be found online or on social media so people
So
can connect
easy.
with you?
Search Doug Ridley and you'll find me. I'm on at Doug Ridley Official, which is my speaking social media account, and working on speaking on the art of difficult conversations and doing some cool things with that. Ridley Defense, at Ridley Defense on all platforms, and at Doug Defends on all platforms. And I'm pretty darn, I need to be easy to find if I'm going to do this work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we didn't get to talk about the wine bar, which I'm sure we can actually come back, do a repeat on the Moore Park Chamber of Commerce chamber chat. We can talk about that there. But real quick, talk about your book, because we didn't really dive into that deep enough. You've got a book that you're working on. Let us know about it.
Yeah, just quickly. The Art of Difficult Conversations, from the courtroom to the boardroom to the bedroom. And it's definitely not like a bedroom book by any stretch of the imagination, but I have had to figure out how to navigate very difficult conversations, talking about talking with clients, talking with judges, working with my life, working with my wife. And I have put that all together into a framework, and I'm doing keynote speaking on it, legal education on it, and I've written the first draft of the book. The first manuscript is done, and it's breaks it down into figure out how to disarm the situation, detect really what's going on, and then decide how you're going to navigate the conversation from there.
Sounds a little bit like the OODA loop.
A little bit.
Right. So guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys watching. And Natalie was just on. Hopefully you get to go back, Natalie, and watch it on YouTube from the beginning. I'm sure that you're going to love it. And do us a favor, subscribe at Doug Defends on YouTube and Master Motivation Podcast on YouTube. So Doug, thanks again for the conversation. Thanks for all you do here in Moore Park. Thanks for being a good friend and a good community member here. We appreciate everything that you do.
Thanks, man. So much fun.
All right. We'll talk soon. Take care, guys. We'll see you on the next edition of Master Motivation Podcast. We'll see you next Friday. Take care, guys. Be good.